There we go. Jill, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, Rachel. How are you?
We got there in the end, didn't we, with all the tech
Yeah,
problems? My fault
I know.
today.
Yeah,
Loads of
and
tech
that's all
problems.
right. Yeah, I was going to say, if you can't handle it, I don't know who can.
Oh, it's been back to back to back meetings today, and this is the last one. And I think my tech was like, "We need a rest now." But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's exhausted.
it is. How's your day? Are you busy?
Yeah, not too bad. Much the same. A couple of back-to-back meetings, but um, completely domestic orientated. But I'm having a new kitchen today. Now, any female online will know how that is so exciting. So, so if you do hear some drilling in the background, it's people fitting my new kitchen.
Oh, wow, lovely. What kind of kitchen are you having?
We've had a hand-built shaker kitchen.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, because we live in a really old building that was built in 1351. So there isn't a straight wall anywhere. So you can't buy normal things. You have to buy things that somebody will come and bend around the walls and scribe in and fit in properly for you.
Oh, it'd be lovely when it's
So
done
there you
then.
go. Yeah,
Oh, there
yeah,
we
it
go. A bit of
will.
insight into what's going on in Jill's
Yes,
new
Jill's
home.
life today.
So it's almost been, is it nearly a year since you took up the role at EMD UK? How long have you been in that position now? Is it a year?
Yeah, so I was on the board. So I was a board member last year, and then I started as the CEO in January. So we're just coming up to the end of my first 12 months period, with lots and lots of things happening. I'm sure that you might have seen some of them or not seen others. So yes, so it's been a great year for EMD UK. I think we've really achieved some great things, more so than we have done in previous years. So we're delighted as a team to launch some of those things. And thank you, Rachel, for inviting us along to talk about some of them.
Yeah, very much. So it's been an interesting one. You've been in the industry, I think probably about the same, maybe a bit longer than me, only a few years longer, if that. You have done so many different things in the industry and built amazing businesses and just been part of the fabric of the industry for such a long time. So I know that we were so excited when you took this role because of your background and your understanding of the Group X instructor. I don't think there could be anybody better than you really to take that role and that job. And I would appreciate it's had some challenges. But what's the future? How do you see the future for EMD UK from a Group X standpoint going forward into 2024 as we record this podcast?
Yeah. It's a really interesting question, actually, and like you said, I think I'm on my 45th year as a group exercise teacher, so which is too long, really. But when I look back over that and then look at the future relative to that, um, group exercise has always been, from a management perspective within the sector, a marginalized sector. There's always lots of thoughts around gym and PT and money spent in that aspect, and then the group exercise teacher, from the community all the way through to your big chain clubs and your leisure sector operators and that sort of thing, have quietly, for years and years, done their job, reaching thousands of people and bringing exercise to the heart of every town in the UK. I don't think there's a town in the UK or a village that there's not a group exercise teacher who's working and bringing exercise, fitness and health to their community. So I think the thing that's changed for me, and I hope is coming for the future, is that the whole country is beginning to realize the value of group exercise to health, to people with conditions, to movement, to everything that we need to do to stay healthy and well. And also the recognition that the group exercise teacher is the center of that. And without the group exercise teacher, we don't have group exercise. So bring the two together. I think the future, certainly the EMD are pushing for, is the full recognition for those group exercise teachers.
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? Whenever you look, there's so many opportunities within group exercise, and as you know, I have some big group exercise groups on social media that I speak to on a daily basis, and I think group X teachers are very tired and very weary of what it takes to be recognised, what it takes to put bums on seats. It's a lot more than it meets the eye. I think when you are a self-employed Group X teacher, as you well know, you have to wear a lot of hats. You have to be very, very committed to this industry and this role for lots of different reasons. But we see the NHS struggling. We see so many ways where group exercise instructors can step in and really make a bigger difference than they are doing now. So do you see that bridge? Do you see there's an opportunity there with the NHS, group fitness, and the general deconditioned state of the population? Is EMD doing anything to bridge that gap and help instructors maybe move in towards those two sectors, bring them together a bit closer? Because that's where I see the growth. To you?
Yeah, I do, and I think group exercise has moved so far from when I started 45 years ago in one aspect, and it's still very much the same in other aspects. You know, from a teacher in the studio aspect, it's still very much the same. You know, we're energized, we know what we're doing, we're full of ideas for our community and our classes. But I think what has become recognised is the value to health. And as you quite rightly point out, the NHS now are recommending Pilates and different classes for health. DCMS, the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, have launched a new strategy that includes physical activity for health and for long-term conditions. And now all of the organisations across the country are working up to that strategy. So I think over the next, EMD being one of those organisations, so I think over the next 5 or 6 years, you're going to see a growth up to that strategy. There's other organisations like Active Partnerships, Women in Sport, all of these organisations that are coming together now to drive the health and exercise agenda. So I absolutely think that the key fact for a group exercise teacher is that we're going to be part of that strategy. And I don't know whether you saw the recent report about the social aspect of dance, and EMD UK have commissioned the same report to be run for next year to collect data, information, statistics on the social aspects to health of group exercise itself, building on the dance one that was done last year. So we're hoping by the end of next year, we'll be able to support teachers much more with facts, figures, and a drive to those health agendas and that strategy.
That's wonderful. Great to hear. I mean, these things all take time, don't they? But and even though you and I have been in the industry for lots of decades, it's still a relatively new industry, and it is still new, and everybody's finding their way. And because of the pandemic and things have changed, the landscape's changed a lot. So it's good to know that you're driving that forward, and you've got the group exercise instructor in mind. The EMD, tell us the sort of overall remit of EMD UK. Why would somebody want to join EMD? What would be the benefit to the Group X teacher?
Yeah, it's a good question again, Rachel, and thanks for asking that, because, you know, we're asked over so many years, aren't we, to part with very hard-earned money to be members of different organisations. And the one key thing, being a group exercise teacher myself, is I'm very conscious if I've got to pay my money for somebody, that it's not just about my membership, it's how does that organisation support me in return? How can they help me do my job? So EMD UK have built a new resource centre, of which I know we're very lucky to have people like yourself contributing to, Rachel, and many other people, where we're building resources all the way through from how to keep yourself well, to how to build your classes, business resources, lots of different resources in there. And that is free with your membership. So we have a free membership offering, so you can join us without even parting with a penny. So we wanted to flip on its head the concept of joining an organisation and only receive your membership or insurance to for your money, to actually, well, you don't need to pay us any money, join anyway and see what we can offer. So we brought in a new free membership, and everybody has access to those resources. But then we were obliged, as the governing body for group exercise, to also recognise professionals within the sector. So we've also brought in 2 different levels of professional membership, and there are additional resources in there that support the teacher as you develop into your professional role. So there'll be things in there like revision materials, safeguarding materials, materials that you as a professional might need. We're going to be building some extra community materials in there. Things like funding you can access through there. Also partners, who we call delivery partners like yourself, offer discounts to professional teachers through there, so you can join and pay a lot less. You can get PPL discount through there, you can get DBS checks through there. So everything that supports you professionally, you can get through your professional membership. And what we have done is we've reduced the cost, so we've brought the cost right down to £25. We've also put events free within there. I don't know whether you saw that we ran an event last week, and then we've got our big event, of which you're going to be part of at IFS in April. So these events will be free to our membership. So we're trying to give as much value to the group exercise instructor, so that we flip that coin on its lid and say, actually, let's give you as much as we possibly can. Now, with that in mind, we need the group exercise instructor on board to tell us what it is that they would like in that. And so we have this great team who can generate resources. We have government funding, which needs to be spent on behalf of the group exercise teacher. So we have these 2 goals with that. One is what we call a systemic goal, which is listening to the sector, the wider voice. How can we take on board what the sector needs, the challenges the sector faces, and put some resource in place for that? And then how can we also bring that professional element to the sector, making sure that people are supported as a professional?
Gosh, that's important short. So I think that many instructors are, okay, we just need to have a little look at what you're doing and make sure that you are doing what you say you're going to do before we jump in. And that is really understandable, because group exercise instructors have been let down in the past. And even recently, an organisation popped up, didn't it? And suddenly vanished with people's memberships and finance. So it is interesting to hear you say that, and I think this is why these conversations are so important. So, and especially with yourself being the head of the organisation, I think it's good that you can come on the podcast and have a chat, and we can have these questions and comments. But going forward in 2024, do you see the sector? Do you see growth of the sector? We saw a lot of instructors give up after the pandemic. I think pay is the main reason instructors do stop, or they go from a full-time position in the industry, they go to part-time, they get another job because they can't fund their life with the wages that most organisations, leisure centres, health clubs, gyms can afford to pay or do pay. And I think that brings us nicely to the white paper that you commissioned. Have we got any news on that? How is the industry receiving it? What are the operators saying? And what's come since the white paper was published?
Yeah, the white paper started in terms of research in about 2018, then paused like everything else did during the pandemic. And then, of course, some of the research done prior to that was no longer relevant after the pandemic because everybody worked slightly differently. Yeah. I think the baseline of the paper really is, and the consultation that happened, was to try and get to the bottom of what are instructors currently paid? Where is the disparity amongst that pay? Mm-hmm. And also, what do we get paid for? So we approached the paper based on the research that had been done over the years on what I would call being paid for a session rather than being paid for an hour. So whether it's an hour, 3/4, half an hour, actually, when you're being paid as a group exercise teacher, whether that's you paying yourself within your own business, whether it's being paid by somebody else's business or an operator, you're being paid for the work around that session. So it's not just the session that is involved. As you know, there's planning, there's running your little session, big session, own business, but there's a lot to running it. You manage it, you run it, you plan it, you deliver it, you customer service it, you chat to members before and after it. So when you start to add up the time involved in teaching one class, be that one session, if you take the pay that people are paid in some places, and not in all places by a long chalk, and spread that out over maybe 2.5, 3 hours worth of work that's gone into a lesson. For some instructors, they're down on minimum wage. For some, and then when you add what they have to pay out over and above that, they can be below minimum wage. But there is no set pattern. I think that was the bottom line that came out of the pay paper. No set pattern at all. Now, the paper is controversial, and I love the word controversial because it just means it's open to discussion and debate. Yeah. We could, everything we do is controversial.
Yeah.
But we could have taken one of two positions, which was to sit on the fence and do nothing, or publish a paper. Now, one of the controversies that comes out of the paper is whether anybody will follow it or not. Nobody can legislate pay. The only pay in the whole country that's legislated is minimum wage.
Yeah.
Outside of that, all sectors pay as they wish. However, many sectors have pay bands that over the years have been adopted. So we approached it from the perspective of let's set some pay bands. Now, there are many unquantifiable things for employers that can't be quantified, that could go into whether you pay somebody more than another teacher. So, class numbers, how much you spend on your training, how popular you are as a teacher, how much value you bring to the club in other ways. Lots of different things, but those are not quantifiable. So we took just a simple route, which was how long have you been working? And what level of qualification do you hold? And we went out to consultation with the paper, and 83% of instructors in the consultation agreed that it was necessary to have a pay band published. So we asked them the question, do you want us to publish this or not? Yeah. Despite the fact that this might be ignored or go anywhere.
Yeah.
So 83% said yes, they felt it supportive to publish it. Now, employers, operators all contributed to that, and everybody had their say. There's some very, very valid points brought up by operators. Not all operators can pay. For various reasons. They might be restricted by particularly local authority areas. You might be a small business that's restricted from how many people come in the class, and many business elements that you're being hit with as an employer or as an operator also are going up in price, and your income also is getting more compressed. So there are lots of operators who also had their say. So in the paper, there are lots of ways to value instructors other than pay. But I think the point of the paper for us was, these are the recommended pay bands. This is fair pay. If you can't pay that, have an honest conversation with your instructors about what you can pay and how else you can value them. Because for some, I love group exercise instructors. I think we're super on it, super hard workers. I don't think there's anybody who comes to work with as much energy as a group exercise teacher. And I think if somebody has an honest conversation with you, we're reasonable, and you can kind of go, okay, I get that. So, but actually, if you're going to do that for me, I'm fine. If you're going to give me some free training, I'm fine if my wages can't go up, because at least I don't have to pay for my training. So we did look at the whole piece across the piece and took on everybody's ideas. And then we came up with the pay bands, and there is the lower end of a pay band and the higher. And then we took a lot of controversy on, well, if I paid this upper end of the pay band, I'd be bankrupt as a business, And I want people to position that differently, which is actually these are recommended pay bands. So nobody's suggesting you pay all your teachers the top of a pay band. But what a pay band does is give an employer again, an open and honest discussion that says, actually, if you add these other things, we'll slide you up the pay band, just like all professions do. And it's understanding from teachers, well, if I'm here on the pay band, what do I need to do if I'm working for you as a business to move myself up it? What would you like? How can we work together in partnership? And then, of course, there's the controversy of, will people use it? But in my experience, and I'm sure you've been there, I remember back to the 80s, Rachel, when even when qualifications came in and we said, why do we need a qualification? Suddenly 40 years on, it's all we know. So what I say to teachers is use the paper for conversation, because the more we use it, the more we have the conversation, the more the paper becomes norm.
Yeah.
We've already had employers who have brought in pay reviews from the paper.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So there's conversations happening. So this isn't dictatorial. It's not legislated. It's not everybody must pay this. It's have a conversation about pay and let's everybody agree that what we're getting is valued, I think is the word, across the board. So
brilliant.
Yeah, so that's really the ethos of it. But it's controversial. We fully understand that. But for the conversation to happen, we felt as a governing body, we were the people in the right place at the right time. We'd funded the research. We felt that to support exercise teachers, we would come out and make some decisions, albeit those decisions might not suit everybody.
Well, I think that's very, and then when you explain it like that, it's very valid. So for an instructor who is maybe needs to have a conversation about pay, that can be the starting block, can't it? It could be sending the details off to superiors and ask them for their opinion, feedback. What would you suggest?
Yeah. What would I suggest about the paper?
For instructors to start the conversation with an employer, do you think to bring their attention to it? How could they use the paper with their employer?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we had many instructors as well who were already within those pay bands, because the pay bands were set on a minimum to maximum of what we were finding. How would I use paper? I would say, if you were my employer, Rachel, I'd say to you, firstly, could I meet to talk about pay? I probably wouldn't send you the paper because most employers have had it anyway. Okay. But I'd probably say, could we meet? And I'd probably take it with me. And if they have, and I'd ask them if they've seen it. And if they have seen it, great. And if they haven't, say, would they like to? And then I would go in and say, look, I feel that my pay isn't reflective of my value at the moment. Could we have a look at ways that we could possibly increase my pay? And if as an employer that's not possible, I mean, I own a studio as well. I am the workforce. And the interesting thing was, when I published the paper, you'll laugh at this, before I published it, I looked at it and went, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to pay all of my teachers £5 more. So there was a split second, and I'll say it was a split second, where I went, shall I just bury the paper? Shall I bury it in my in tray and just take months to publish it? And then I sat down as a business and thought, no, actually, if I've just done this whole work on valuing my teachers, then I must value my own teachers. And so I put the pay up. Now, the interesting thing about that as a business, we had lots of people say, well, my business doesn't make so much. And I struggled to make the jump to put the pay up. But I actually stood back for a second and went, I'm the business owner. It's my responsibility to make sure that my business is viable to run, my classes for my teachers. It's not my teacher's responsibility to accept a lower pay if I don't run the business well enough.
Yeah, that's very true. What a great way of looking at it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So I had to challenge myself as a business to say, actually, if I've got to put this more into my costs, I've got to go out and earn more. So I had to look at more creative ways in the business to bring more income in. So there just has to be an understanding of that. But I found my teachers to be incredibly supportive. So, for instance, I was talking about the honest conversation. When I first came back from COVID as a business, and many businesses were in this, we had no idea how many people were going to come back. And so some classes were cancelled last minute, and having an honest conversation with your teacher saying, look, normally, we'd give you 48 hours notice, but, we're all struggling to get the income back. My teachers agreed for 6 months to accept a cancellation and not bill the business if the business didn't have members in. But we all agreed on the principle of an honest conversation. And then as soon as it was possible, we reverted back to where teachers had the proper contract that they should have. And I just found, having that explanation and that conversation with my teachers, they bring things to the table that I didn't think about. I brought things that they didn't think about. And then we just thought, well, there's other things we can do here. And so I think when you get that meeting with your employer, it doesn't need to be a challenging one. It needs to be an honest one that says, what can we do? What do you have available that can help us? How can we help you get the members into classes? Because we all do that as a great job. I mean, people come to classes because of the teacher. You know, there's no two ways about that, is there?
Absolutely.
You know, we've all been there. You know, if I walked into one of your classes, Rachel, and said, I'm here to cover, half of them would leave the room before they even knew if I was good. Because, you know, they're there to see Rachel and come into Rachel's class. So we do bring in that enormous value. So, yeah, honest conversation, I think.
Good. That's really helpful, Gill. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So last questions then on EMD UK moving forward in 2024. What's your biggest challenges that you face as an organisation in 2024, and how are you going to overcome them?
Ooh, there are many. So I'd say that we've done some tremendous work this year, but we're only at the start of it. So one of the biggest challenges for us is, how do we take the good start that we've done and make it better? So how do we improve on it, and how do we keep the momentum on it? Because, as you know, anything to launch and drive out takes an enormous amount of hard work across a great talented team. So it's keeping the momentum on that, and how we take that further into the sector on behalf of the group exercise teacher. So I think, you know, one of the big pieces of work we started is the scope of practice for professional membership. So the concept of scope of practice is not a new one. Many sectors work on it. And the reason that we've started that work is because there are hundreds of different genres of exercise. I look at group exercise now, and one of the things you said, you know, where's it going for the future? If you look at a class timetable, there are so many varied types of exercise. And I almost wish we took the word exercise out of it and just talked about it as movement-based classes. You know, what is the type of movement that is done in this class? And there are so many beautiful types of movement now that have brought so many other people in to the sector, so many participants. So when I look at the scope of practice, what we're trying now to do is break it down to give people professional recognition for the type of practice that they teach. So if you teach a particular style, you don't have to have this style if you teach this style. We'll recognise this style. We've got the professional standards that underpin it all. So this isn't circumventing professional standards. This is using the professional standards to say, well, if in the professional standards there are 60 scopes of practice, how do we define all 60 rather than all 60 trying to get the same one? So that's a big piece of work that we're doing, and that's quite challenging. And the example I'd give people is, you know, we have, if you're a lawyer and you want to specialize in criminal law, we have a base law that everybody studies together. And if you want to specialize in criminal law, you specialize in criminal law. After that, you don't have to go and get a conveyancing law certificate to specialize in criminal law. You know, and sometimes we can get a little bit like that in the industry and say, oh, actually, you want to teach criminal law, well, you've got to go and get your conveyancing first, and it makes no sense, and it costs us money. So it's more a case of looking at the scope of practice, which identifies your skills, your experience, your knowledge, your training, and says, what am I able to do? Which bits from the professional standards am I missing that I must have that make me safe? And what we're trying to do as EMD is make that available to you, to give you professional recognition at a much more easier to access route, so that we increase diversity across our instructors, that we have more diverse populations coming in for those instructors, that we open up the doors for equality across instructors rather than everybody having the same thing. So that's one of our biggest challenges.
That's a big one, isn't it? And you'll be working on that. That will take a lot of 2024 to do, won't
it? Yes, it will. It will. And we've started that work, and we have about 12 scopes of practice now identified. And those now sit on our website. So you can get professional recognition for a particular area of work that you want to do. And then you can grow your professional practice with your own knowledge and experience as you work across the different ones, so that you can teach what you want to teach.
I love that. And that's definitely something that is going to help so many instructors going forward and employers. Brilliant. Bravo for that, Gill. Well done. If anybody wants to contact you directly, Gill, can they? I know you sit at the head of this massive organisation, but I know that you are a very approachable and contactable person. So if anyone's got any feedback and just wants to maybe share an idea with you, is that okay? Where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. My email address is Gill with a G, Gill, at emduk.org. And for us, it's important that people do tell us what they want, because this is the organisation that belongs to the group exercise teacher. So it doesn't belong to us as a group. It belongs to the group exercise teacher. So what we have to be very open and honest about is how we can work better for the group exercise teacher. And for that, we need to understand what that is. So at any time, anybody can share information, ideas, thoughts. If you think there's a resource that you'd like add in, then let us know, because we have a whole resource team who are sitting generating all of that for the plan for next year. Well, if you want something on that plan, we need to know what it is so that we can put it on the plan. So yeah, absolutely, get in touch.
Fabulous. Thank you, Gill. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite, Rachel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.